Sometimes the hardest thing to do is let the truth surface. That post was my confession, my soul laid bare, and now I stand in the raw reality of it all. Everything I once held close is no longer a secret, and I feel both liberated and exposed in this moment of honesty. In sharing my truth, I unburdened my heart and my mind, and now the weight of those untold stories no longer holds power over me. There's a strange peace in revealing what was once hidden, but also a vulnerability that cuts deep. The openness feels both freeing and frightening. That post wasn't just words on a screen. It was a deep revelation of who I am, where I've been, and where I stand now. Every truth shared has left me feeling lighter and yet strangely more accountable to myself and to those who now know. I thought I was ready to share my truth, but now that it's out, I feel a wave of emotions. There's a relief in knowing it's no longer a secret, but there's also a vulnerability in being seen so clearly without any filters or walls. This is who I am, raw and unfiltered. The words I shared in that post are more than just confessions. They're pieces of my soul, exposed to the world. With each sentence, I felt both a weight lift and a new burden of honesty take its place. Everything is out in the open now, and there's no turning back. That post was my final release, a confession of the thoughts and feelings I had kept hidden for so long. Now that it's out in the world, I'm left with a mixture of liberation and uncertainty. I'm no longer trapped by silence, but I'm also exposed in ways I never imagined. There's something almost sacred about the act of confession. In sharing my truth, I've unlocked a door I can never close again. Now I stand with the knowledge that everything I once kept to myself is out in the open for all to see, and the freedom and fear both come rushing in. I never realized how heavy the weight of secrecy could be until I released it all in that post. Now my thoughts and feelings are no longer just mine. They're shared with the world, and I can't help but feel a strange sense of lightness mixed with the rawness of complete exposure. That post wasn't just a release of words, it was the unveiling of my true self. Now there's nowhere to hide from what I have shared. The truth is out, and with it comes a strange sense of freedom, but also the discomfort of knowing my deepest thoughts are now public. The act of confession, of finally speaking my truth, has opened up a space within me that I didn't know existed. I feel a sense of relief, but also a stirring discomfort that comes with being fully seen. The vulnerability is overwhelming, but it's also where true growth begins. In letting my guard down and sharing my true thoughts, I've stepped into a new chapter. It's like breathing air after being underwater for so long. There's still a bit of fear, but the exhilaration of freedom outweighs it. Everything is now out in the open, and there's no going back. With that post, I let go of the past, of all the things I kept buried. It's an odd mix of emotions: relief, vulnerability, and the weight of truth. Everything that was hidden is now known, and in that, I find both peace and a deep awareness of what it means to be truly seen. There's an overwhelming sense of clarity that comes when you finally speak your truth. That post was my confession, and now that everything is out in the open, I find myself in a place of raw honesty. It's both freeing and unsettling, but I wouldn't have it any other way. The vulnerability I felt when writing that post was something I didn't expect. It was as if I was exposing the very core of my being, but now that it's out, there's a profound sense of release. The weight of silence is gone, but a new kind of truth has taken its place. I've spent so much time hiding behind walls, pretending to be someone I wasn't. But that post, those words, were a confession of my true self. Now everything is out in the open, and with it comes both a sense of liberation and a new sense of accountability. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let people in, even if it means revealing your deepest truths. That post was my way of sharing what I've been holding inside for far too long, and now that it's out, I can't help but feel both relief and the weight of what's been unleashed. That post wasn't just an update, it was an unburdening of my soul. Now that everything is out in the open, I feel exposed, but also incredibly light. The truths I've carried for so long are no longer my secret. It's a strange feeling, but also one that brings clarity. In the past, I held so much back, but the moment I wrote that post, I knew I was ready to face whatever came next. Now that my confession is out there, I feel like I've stepped into a new version of myself, one that is freer but also more vulnerable than ever before. Releasing my truth was like lifting a weight I didn't even realize was there. The post was my confession, a sharing of everything I'd been too afraid to admit. Now that it's all out in the open, there's a strange mix of freedom and rawness that I didn't expect. That post felt like an exhale I didn't even know I needed. It was my truth, my confession, and now that it's out in the open, I feel lighter yet more aware of the world around me. There's something powerful about being so fully exposed, yet strangely, I feel more myself than ever. What I thought would be a simple confession turned into a profound revelation. Sharing my thoughts and feelings left me feeling vulnerable, but also awakened. The truth is no longer hidden, and with it comes both freedom and a deep sense of responsibility. The courage it took to post those words was immense, but the sense of relief that followed was even greater. Everything I held back is now known, and though there's a sense of exposure, there's also a deep connection to myself and the world around me. Writing that post was like opening a door that I'd kept shut for far too long. Now, everything is out in the open, and while it feels freeing, it also brings a new awareness of the power of honesty and the weight of being fully seen. That post was my true confession. No filters, no barriers. And now, with everything out in the open, I find myself in a state of heightened clarity. The vulnerability feels raw, but it's also a kind of freedom I never knew existed. There's something beautiful and terrifying about exposing your innermost thoughts to the world. That post was my confession, and with it came a rush of relief, but also a flood of emotions I wasn't prepared for. Everything is now out there, and I'm left with a sense of both peace and vulnerability. I wrote that post not to seek validation, but to finally release what had been building inside me. The moment I hit post, I knew everything would change. Now that my truths are out in the open, I feel more connected to myself than ever before, but also a little raw. There's a strange sense of closure that comes with finally sharing what you've kept locked inside. That post was my confession, and now everything is out in the open. I feel a sense of liberation, but also a lingering vulnerability that reminds me of the strength it takes to be honest. My heart was heavy with unspoken thoughts, but once I released them in that post, I felt an immediate lightness. Everything is now known, and with that knowledge comes a deep sense of freedom mixed with a new kind of awareness of what it means to be truly seen. That post wasn't just words. It was a release of everything I had hidden for so long. Now everything is out in the open, and I stand in the aftermath of my confession. It's both freeing and terrifying, but in the end, it's exactly what I needed. There's something so powerful about being fully open with the world. That post was my true confession, and now that everything is exposed, I feel both liberated and deeply vulnerable. But this vulnerability is what brings me closer to myself. The fear of being judged once I posted my confession was overwhelming, but now that it's out, I feel a strange peace, as though I've stepped into my own truth. Everything is now known, and I'm left standing in the light of my own authenticity. Confessing my truth wasn't easy, but it was necessary. That post was my way of shedding the layers I'd been hiding behind. And now everything is out in the open. There's a new sense of clarity in my heart, but also an understanding of the power of honesty. That post was more than just a confession, it was a piece of my soul made visible. Now that everything is out in the open, I can't help but feel both liberated and exposed in a way I never anticipated. I knew that sharing my truth would change everything, but I didn't expect the emotional roller coaster that followed. That post was my confession, and now, with everything out there, I feel a deep sense of release, but also a new understanding of my own vulnerability. The act of confession is both freeing and humbling. That post allowed me to release all that I had been holding inside, and now everything is known. I stand here, vulnerable and open, but with a sense of strength that I never thought I'd feel. I didn't realize how much power there was in sharing my truth until I did it. That post was my confession, and now everything is out in the open. It's both scary and exhilarating to let go of what I've kept hidden for so long. Revealing my truth wasn't just about letting people in, it was about letting myself be seen. That post was my confession, and now that it's out, I feel more connected to my own heart. But there's also a vulnerability I can't ignore.